What's up guys, and welcome back to the Bonsai-En YouTube channel. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be potting up this swamp cypress that I've got next to me. So if you want to see some tips and tricks on how we get that done, then stick around. Alright, so what I've got next to me here is actually one of my personal trees that I've been developing. This is what we call a swamp cypress here in Australia, but in the United States, you guys call them bald cypress, but nonetheless, it's the same work, same species of tree. Now, right now, in Australia, we're just coming into spring, okay? So all our trees are starting to wake up. We're starting to see some of that activity, and you're probably looking at this tree next to me and saying, well, that tree is fully awake. It's already flushed out. It's got all its growth. But this growth on here, this is actually last year's growth that didn't fall off during winter, okay? So here in Australia, we don't have super harsh winters like other places do around the world. We have very, very mild winters. Some people might even say we don't even have a winter. Where I am here, we're lucky to even get down to 0 degrees. The coldest we get here is about 5 degrees, 4 degrees Celsius. That's a really cold day for us during winter. And 9 times out of 10, that temperature, we only feel that from maybe 3 a.m. through to 6 a.m. And then once the sun starts coming up, it warms up again. And then our average temperatures are around 10 to 16 degrees Celsius throughout the day. So sometimes, like this tree next to us, this guy didn't lose all its leaves this year. It lost some of them, but not all of them. And I've had trident maples out there that have done the same thing. I've had one that lost every single leaf on it. I've had one that didn't lose a single leaf on it, didn't even change colour. So that's just our mild winters here. But the thing that tells me that this is ready to be potted up right now is the fact that the new buds that are coming out across the tree, and I'll get a close-up shot for you, these show me that they're swelling and they're just about breaking, okay? So this is the time to really go in and get this tree potted up. Now, what we're going to be doing today is actually taking this out of the nursery growing container and into the bonsai pot. And there are some nuances that let us know why this is the perfect time to do this for this tree. So let me just take you back a little bit with this tree so we can go through the steps that I've taken and where we're going now, and hopefully that'll help you understand a little bit more your timing for repotting and when you should and shouldn't do it, and when the tree's telling you that it's ready for that work. So this tree here, when I purchased it maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, it was around 2 or 3 meters tall, okay? It was quite tall. And then you can see in here where I've given it a trunk chop, okay? So I was growing it on to get the thickness in the base, and then I trunk chopped it, and then I started from a new leader. Now, if you're familiar with my Bonsai-En critique series, you've probably heard me talk about this time and time again, where we grow the tree on, and then we chop it, okay? And please understand that some species can't have this trunk chop done, okay? Especially junipers, black pines, and stuff like that. If you trunk chop here and there's no growth behind that cut, then you've killed the tree. So just research the species of tree. I'm not going to go through them all right now. But go through the species of trees and see if that kind of work can be done. But this tree, not an issue, okay? So I cut it there, and then I've started a new leader, okay? And I've put movement in it, and you can see the taper that we're getting from thick to thinner, and then as we get up the tree, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner. Now, if you had seen the short that I'd done not long ago on the YouTube channel, and you can go and watch it after this video, but I did a little YouTube short talking about this branch on the side here. And if you've seen that, you would have seen that this branch was about this long, okay? It was very long. And I was growing that out to get thickness in it, because this here was actually thicker than my first branch, and we don't want that. So, you know, the work that's been done on this tree so far is basically just developing the thickness of the tree and the taper in the tree. So first of all, I let it grow out, then I trunk chopped it, started a new leader, and then I grew my first branch out, got it thicker Then this section of the tree here got it thicker than the new leader. So we've got our nice taper. This is going to be the thickest branch on the tree as we move up. Okay, and then we've put some movement in the new leader. And now we get to the point where I've actually cut this branch back. So this will bud prolifically all over this branch. So it looks bare right now, but that's okay. It'll be fine. So this is going to bud back. I'll start getting new growth. So then I can start building a fine branch structure off this. I've got some of my other branches up here that I've just cut, okay? So I've got a branch around the back here that's been cut, this one's been cut, and this one's been cut. So they're all ready to go. And this has been growing in a organic mix. It's been fertilized heavily. And right now, this tree, at this point of time, has got the most energy that it's going to have, okay? So it's go time for this tree. We've developed, we've done our cutbacks, we've got our basic structure in the tree, okay? It looks like crap at the moment. I know that, okay? But what we have is our bones. We have our structure. We have that important stuff that we can only get from development. That's done. The tree's healthy. You know, it's got mountains of buds coming out over it everywhere. I can tell this tree is just full of energy. So what that's going to allow us to do is take this big amount of roots that we got in this pot, right, and get them down into a short, shallow pot. And I'll bring the pot up in a minute, but you would have seen it in the unboxing video that I did not long ago. It's the pot from Bad Swan Ceramics. So we're going to get this tree into that pot today. But right now, it's important to know that when we're in a big pot like this, we've got a lot of roots on this tree, okay? But we've got plenty of energy in this tree. So it's do or die right now. It's get this tree into a bonsai pot or don't, okay? So we need to get this root system back, and we're going to take a lot off this root system today. We're going to be talking about a 70 to 80% reduction in root mass on this tree. But we're going to be smart about it, and we're going to do the work properly, and that's going to give us success moving forward, okay? So I hope that gives you guys a bit of a background on the tree and where we're moving. So once we get this into the bonsai pot, we get it into inorganic soils, then we can start growing out little finer branches all over this tree. But our main goal right now is to get it into the bonsai pot, get that root reduction done now while this tree is just bursting with energy, let it recover, and then we can revisit this tree next season and start doing a bit more styling on it. But right now, our main focus is to get it into the bonsai pot. So we're going to start on that right now. We'll go through all the steps and we'll see if we can give you guys some good tips and tricks on how to do this process. Alright, so the first thing we're going to have to do is get this thing out of the plastic pot. So I'm just going to give it a wiggle, get this guy out here. It's quite heavy. So now that we've got the tree out, I'm going to bring you guys in a bit closer and we're going to focus on the root system a bit more, and we'll have a chat about the next step in this procedure. Alright, so when we're working on a tree like this, that's come out of the nursery container, okay, we always want to start from the top. When we're working our root system back, we want to start from the top because we're not going to have as much root mass around the top surface of this. Plus, we also want to find where our nabari is, okay? So we got, if I rotate this here, we've got this big guy coming out here and he disappears into the soil somewhere. Plus, we've got one coming out here, and there's probably more. Look, there's a big one back here. So we need to find where the actual base of our tree is. Now, I've not seen the base of this tree since I purchased it. So I do not know what's under this soil surface. We could have a base that's about this wide. You just don't know. So always go from the top down, okay? And then when you've reached your base, you might end up about down here. So you've already reduced the root mass by this much, and there's probably not even that much roots in this area of the soil, okay? Up around the top. We don't really get as much root mass around the top of the tree as we do in the middle. So we can reduce it a fair amount just by working from the top first, and then we'll work from the bottom up. So our first job here is to actually dig down and start finding where the actual base of our tree is, seeing what roots we've got up the top of the tree to work with. So I'm going to use my aluminium root pick here, okay? These are made by Kikua. So, you know, usually I would use wooden chopsticks, but this is going to be a little bit more harsh on the chopsticks, so I use my aluminium one. Now these won't actually damage the roots. There's no sharp bits on these. So we're just going to go in and from the center out, okay? Just scrape out, start scraping out your soil. And, you know, if your tree's been in this kind of soil for quite some time, it might be a bit more compacted than what this is here. So you might have to get into it just a little bit more. But don't worry about that too much, because as I said, we're going to be taking quite a lot of this root mass off. So we don't want to be careless about it, but we don't, you know, we can be a little bit more aggressive with it as well at this time, okay? So as we said, this tree is full of energy, so most of what we do here, the tree is going to repair itself over this coming growing season. And it'll start, actually, with good watering and the temperatures coming up at the moment, this tree will start to repair itself within 14 days. We'll start to see some new root growth. So we just need to start working this surface back. Now I have got my root rake here. You can use your root rake. This will be a little bit more aggressive, but just be careful with your root rake because you can actually do a lot of damage with this. So try not to put a lot of muscle in when you're using your root rake. This is good for getting the top layer off, especially, you know, when we grow trees in this organic mix, we get a lot of weeds up on the top of the surface, and the root rake can really help get through the roots of those weeds and get rid of them. So we can just, and especially if you've got compacted soil too, the root rake will be good for that. So we're just going to keep working around here. I'm going to go back to my root pick here and just get all this old fertilizer off and start to see what we've got in terms of a nabari. Now I'm actually really keen to see what's in the base of this tree because, as I said, I've not seen this yet. So it'll be interesting to see what's down, you know, below this surface layer. I can tell that there's some fairly big roots here, and knowing how these trees grow, it probably does have a fairly big base under here. But we'll see. You know, sometimes you can strike gold under the soil, sometimes your luck just runs out. So we'll just have to see. Now, I actually can build a nabari on this tree, depending on what we've got. But also too, if we've got the base of the tree, if it's really thick and goes right down into here somewhere, we may actually have to cut that back up, and that'll actually force all the growth back up into these top roots, which will help us, you know, grow a nabari and thicken that out. It's kind of like redirecting the energy. But we won't know what we've got to work with until we get down here and have a look. So let me just get a bit more off this surface layer here. And as you can see, just always from the center out, okay? That way we're not tearing roots, because, you know, once again, as I said, even though we are taking a fair amount of root mass off this tree today, we want to see what we've got to work with first. We don't want to, you know, necessarily shoot ourselves in the foot. And this is another good reason why we start from the top, because as you can see, I've already gotten down this deep and we've still really got no root mass here. So imagine if you start working from the bottom up, okay, and then you get to this point and you go, well, I've got no more roots left now. So it's always good to start from the top, see what you've got, and then start on the bottom later. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to continue to do this because you're not going to want to watch me do this for the next 10-15 minutes. I'm going to take the top surface layer of this off, see what we've got, and then we'll come back and have a look. Alright, so as you can see, I've been doing a bit of digging. You know, we've gotten down, we're starting to see where all our nabari is and our big roots that are all coming out the side of the tree here. We've got this big knee on this side. But what I've uncovered is just here, as you can see, this was where our soil was, okay, in the growing container. And we've dug down to about here. Okay, so I've already removed this much soil from the actual thing. You can see that's kind of the root ball, and that's where it was up to there. Now, in this process, you can see here under the soil surface, we've actually uncovered this part of the base here, okay, and it comes from here and it twists and it comes back this way and moves back this way. And then we've got this nice big root here that comes out the front. So this is actually the back side of the tree from where I initially started styling it. So this here alone may actually make me change the whole entire orientation of the tree, because it would be a shame not to use this. Now, this is where the proposed front of the tree was. And as you can see, this is where our soil surface was up to before we started digging. Now this was the proposed front. Now we do have, you know, some nice roots that come off here, but this is just, you know, still just straight. Where this here, with this bit of movement here that comes around here, we start from here, if this was our front, and we come back over this way, and then we move back this way, and the bark twists with us. So we've got quite a fair bit of movement here that we've just uncovered under the base. Now we've still got a fair bit of work to do. Now we need to come up from the bottom, okay? We need to come up from the bottom, and we need to see what roots are down in this section. Because if we start cutting these roots off up here, all these top roots off up here, and we don't have enough root system under here to support the tree, we're going to kill it. So now that we've found kind of where the base of our tree is, we need to come from the bottom up, see what roots we've got, then we can make some decisions on where we go from there. So I'll bring the camera in a bit closer and I'll start to show you taking the soil away from the bottom, and we'll go from there. Alright, so now we're going to start taking soil away from the bottom of the tree down here. And we're going to encounter some big thick roots as we move up through here. But we're going to try and get this out here. Now I'm going to use my root rake for this, because the roots that are here I'm not really too fussed about. So if I do tear them with my root rake, that's not going to be too much of an issue for me. But I'm going to just start raking away a bit at a time here, and just trying to loosen up some of this soil down the bottom here. I can see there's a big massive root running through there, which we're going to have to sort out. So we'll just try and free up some of this just so we can see what we've got. And as I run my rake through here, I can feel where all those big thick roots are that have worked their way down to the bottom of the pot. So we're just going to have to try and navigate around those for now until we can get some space around them and start trying to free them up a bit. And then we'll have to start cutting a bit, because obviously those big thick roots, while they're good in development, they help the tree grow, you know, they thicken the tree up. In a bonsai pot, they're just going to be no good to us. So what we want to do now is, while the tree's nice and strong, we cut off all our downward growing roots. We only want lateral roots now that we're going into a bonsai pot. We want to cut off all those big thick roots. Okay, we may even need to work the bottom of the base of the tree a little bit, and we want to cut them with a nice, you know, sharp set of scissors. And then that way, as the root begins to callus, we will actually see some new root growth from those cut sites. And as those roots grow, they'll be in that Akadama pumice mix, and they will have a good balance of water and oxygen, which will allow the roots to grow nice and thin and fine. As those roots grow into the Akadama, they'll split, they'll start to bifurcate, they'll get even finer, and we'll get a nice fine root system out of this tree, within a season or two, we're going to be repotting it again, and we can come back and have a look at it then. So I'm just going to swap over to my root pick here for a minute and try and get a bit deeper in here, try and get in around these big thick roots. As you can see, this kind of repotting work is just all about elbow grease. Really getting in there and getting the work done, and this is this part of bonsai where we really need to know when to get this work done, see what those signs are to let us know that the work's ready to be done, and actually doing it. Because if we miss this train, then we've missed the train. We're not going to get to our destination. So, we're going to be behind a whole nother year waiting for that, window of opportunity to come back around again. So, not only is it learning the techniques of how to do this work, but it's, learning the timing, the proper timing. And, I have heard arguments before that, we say that we do our repotting of junipers early spring and that, and you hear people say, well, I repotted one in the middle of the summer and it didn't die, I got away with it. But it's like, no, you didn't, because what you don't realise is even though your tree may have lived, you've actually set that tree back, you've weakened it, and now it's got to spend a year recovering, whereas if you had done it in spring, it would have recovered really quickly and you would have been on your way again. But now you're going to be putting yourself behind another year. You literally would have been better off waiting till that springtime. I mean, your best option would have been just to do it in spring in the first place. But if you've missed that window of opportunity, wait till the next window of opportunity. Don't just try and do it willy-nilly at any time, okay? Just look at the size of those roots in there. I don't know if you can see those real well on the camera, but they are some big roots in there. Alright, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to keep trying to get the soil out of here, because once again, you're just going to be watching me scrape out a root system for the next 10 minutes. So I'll go through, I'll try and free up these bigger roots, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about making some decisions on what to cut and where to go from there. Alright, so as you can see, we've gone through and cleared out all the soil in between these big thick roots in here. So now we need to come in and we need to start cutting and making some decisions as we go up. Now a lot of these bigger, thicker roots, we can just get rid of them, because as we move up, we will find that these big, thick roots, they're going to have smaller roots as we move up. So this is the very bottom of the black plastic pot that we're in. So we know that really we're not going to use any of these roots. So we can start eliminating on our way up some of these bigger, thicker roots. And I'm just using my root cutters here, as you can see. It's hard to do this backwards. I'm looking at the screen there. There we go. Alright, so. And the reason that you want to use a tool like this is, one, they've got a big, thick, heavy head on them, and they've got super sharp blades. So the more precise you can make that cut, the more chance of you've got of a nice callousing happening, and that one single root that you cut actually branching off into two new finer roots. And that's going to give us much nicer growth on the top of our tree when we get that finer, more ramified growth. Just going through and cutting these big thick roots off. Because obviously too, if you keep these big thick roots on the tree, you're never going to get them into a bonsai pot. And, you know, as I said, this is, you know, you can see the size of these roots that I'm cutting off here. And, you know, downward growing roots as well. And as I said before, this tree's pepped up full of energy right now. So where I'm making all these cuts, it should be able to grow out nice new roots there. And, you know, this is the time to be doing this. So if we want to get this into the bonsai pot, it's really do or die, you know. And we got some bigger roots just there still. And we got these big thick roots just here. So I'm just going to roll this over. So it may block your view for a second. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Now obviously we've got this big thick root here to take care of. So we're going to come in and I'm going to try and cut this one just here. You can see, you know, the size of that. Get rid of that. Now I'm just going to come through and clean all this up with my root scissors here, now that I've got some smaller roots. This is not where we're going to end up, you know, with our final work here, but I'm just cleaning this up so we can, you know, see a bit better as we move forward. Try not to cut your fingers accidentally when you're doing this type of work. Obviously you want to avoid a trip to the emergency room if you possibly can. Alright, so now that we've got all those big thick roots cut, we can actually come in and continue to work back because we've still got quite a bit of root mass to work through. But it's just baby steps at a time. We don't want to rush this. You know, potentially you could come through with a saw and just saw through the root ball here, but you just don't know what's in there and you don't know what you're working with if you do that. So it's better just to come through and, as I said, put in the elbow grease, you know, work the root system back, make some good choices, and, you know, the more work you put into the more work that you put into the trees, especially at this time, the more they're going to give you back. Okay, and the more chance you've got of survival. You don't really want to just be haphazardly coming in and cutting the lifeblood of the tree, you know, with a saw or whatever. You can come through with a root pick, start removing some of the soil and actually see what you got to work with. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to take a bit more of this soil off. And then we'll come back again, we'll have a look at the next stage. Now that we've cut all those big thick ends off, we're still going to have to cut these big thick roots back a bit. but we'll come back and see what we've got. Alright, so before we go any further with this tree, we need to have a little bit of a discussion, because like a lot of the times in bonsai, as we start to do work, things change, okay? So the more that I've done root work on this tree, the further down I've gone. So, you know, you've seen before that we were down here and we were cutting roots out, taking soil out. And the more and more that I've dug through this, the more and more I'm uncovering a very interesting base. Now this has challenged me, because where I had this was the front of the tree, this side. Okay, and now we've got, you know, these 3 roots here. They're not that interesting, big knee here. But on this side, which was the back of the tree, I've got this super interesting line that continues down through the tree here. And then when it gets down to the bottom here, it literally loops around and then comes back around across the bottom, the front here, okay? And there's almost like this cave, this void in the tree just here. It'd be hard to see on camera, but in here I can stick my whole hand in there, right? See, in here. There's like a little cave, like a little void underneath the tree. And this is really cool. And the other thing that it's challenged me with, so now it looks like the back of my tree is now going to be the front of my tree. And also, this base is a lot bigger than the pot that I was going to put it in, okay? So I was going to put it in that Bad Swan ceramics pot, but unfortunately the tree's not going to fit in that now for what I want to do. So I've run out into the shop and I've got this pot just here. So let me just move my turntable out of the way for a minute. So this is the pot that I've gotten out in the shop, and I'm thinking that we're probably gonna have the front. Where are we gonna have the front? Probably about here somewhere. So we've got that little cave over on the side here, which will be interesting. The tree will be lifted, so it'll sit probably here in the pot. We'll have this little cave here. We've got this nice line down through the front. We've still got our first branches just on the opposite side now. We're going to have to either bring this around more or cut this off altogether and replace it with something smaller up here. But we can do that in the future. But what this is going to do is it's going to hide this cut a little bit more. So much has changed on this tree just by digging down into the soil and finding all of this. Now, I know it's probably a bit hard to see where you are there at the moment, but we're going to get back to work and we're going to continue showing you what we're doing here. So, before I bring the camera back in and start working on the roots again, I'll just put this pot down. I did want to show you guys that and where my thought process was going after I, started digging and whatnot. So now, the decision was going to be whether, obviously I've made up my mind now, but the decision was going to be whether I cut the tree here and use all these fine roots up on the top here. So, there's obviously all these roots up here and all the way around the tree. We've got roots all around the base here that will keep the tree alive. Or whether I cut these roots off, all these little roots, use all these fine roots down across the bottom of the tree, because we've got just as many roots down here coming from the base of the tree, and use this. So that's obviously where we're going now. We're going to keep all of this. We're going to get rid of these little roots up on the top of the tree, clean all that up, and we're going to grow the tree on from these roots down here. And a few of these bigger roots that are coming from the top, I'll still put them down and let them grow on, okay? So there's viable root tips down here, and the root's long enough that it'll actually make it into the soil, and we can almost have somewhat of like an aerial root look on the tree, which is pretty common, with these cypress trees. So I'm going to get back into doing the root work. I'll bring you back in closer and we'll continue on. Alright, so back down into the root system now. So, after what I just explained to you, we need to go through now and make a selection on the roots that we're going to keep and what we're going to get rid of. Now, we need to make sure that the tree's got enough roots to survive still. So we need to keep everything that we can across the bottom of the tree here, okay? So we've still got quite a lot of roots up under here. You know, up under the tree, there's lots of good roots under here, lots of fine roots. And then we've got laterally coming off the side here, lots of fine roots across the bottom, okay, all the way around. So it's basically just this little stuff up on top here that we want to get rid of and clean the top of the tree up, okay? Now some of these, you know, like this root here, we may be able to still use this and put it down into the pot and have somewhat of an aerial root. So we're just going to have to go through and make some of those decisions. Let me get my turntable just to make this a little bit easier on myself. So, you know, roots like this are going to be no good to us. All this little fine stuff up here. We do have some viable root tips there, so we're going to keep that for now. And we'll kind of just go through and make these decisions on what to get rid of, what to keep. So this is going to be no good to us, so we'll get rid of that. And once we start cleaning up the top up here, you'll be able to start seeing the base of the tree a lot more clearly, because, you know, stuff like this. Actually, what am I going there? So stuff like this, you know, see that little root there? That's not going to do much for us. It's not going to reach the bottom of the pot, and it's going to be up in the air. So we'll get rid of stuff like that. Clean all this stuff out in here. And make it all look a little bit neater. But this tree has been a really interesting project because, you know, you go into it thinking that you've got your pot picked out, and you go into it thinking that you've got the front of your tree picked out, and you know where you're going with the style and the design of the tree, and then suddenly everything turns around because, you know, the base that you found underneath the tree. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I would say, you know, that's a good thing, and it's good to be challenged like that. And, you know, at the moment with this tree, I'm not married to the design that I do have, and I'm not married to the direction that the tree is going in. So changing the tree at this stage of the game is not really an issue for me, at least anyway. You know, some other people might struggle with that a little bit more. You know, they've got this idea in their head of what they wanted their tree to be. And, you know, that's fine. I understand that. But just know that, you know, bonsai it's an ever-changing art. You know, this is not like a painting where you paint it up and it's done. The tree continues to grow, and, you know, like we've just seen, you go to pot a tree up and you see what's underneath that soil surface, and everything can change just like that. The pot that you've chosen can change. Now I've got a root here that's actually crossing over, so I need to, if you can see here, we've got crossing roots just here, so they don't look real nice. So we need to, you know, make a decision. See, this has got lots of nice good root tips on it, and it's nice and long, so it'll make it down into the root system there. So if we move that one aside, see what we've got here. We've got a nice long root there as well. This one's going to be no good, so I'm going to come in with my root cutter and get rid of that guy. And then we can move this over into that space where we got rid of that one, and that opens that up a bit more, and hopefully we can move that over there a little bit more. this has turned out to be a really interesting tree. I'm glad you guys got to see it on the YouTube channel, because this is usually just the stuff that, you know, this time of year we get really busy with this, and we're just trying to get this work done as quickly and efficiently as possible, because, you know, like I said, we've got that small window of opportunity, but, you know, sort of serendipitously this year we're in lockdown, so I'm spending all my time here, and I've got time to not only do this work but film it for you guys, because, you know, this repot would have taken me maybe an hour and a half, whereas when I'm filming it, it takes 4, maybe 5 hours to film and do everything at the same time. So it's quite a challenge. Now, over here, as you can see, we've got where the root's going to go down into the pot here. So all this stuff up here is going to be basically useless to us. So we're going to get rid of all that and all that, and clean this guy up a bit. Now we actually do have a split in this root here, but that should be okay. We'll see how that goes. Clean it up over this side a little bit. Basically anything that's not going to end up in the pot, we're going to get rid of. But this is not something that I would do willy-nilly either. You need to make sure that as you're getting rid of roots and cleaning up, you've still got enough viable roots down here that you're going to keep the tree alive and healthy. And this will also be species dependent as well. So this kind of work that I'm doing on this cypress right now, you could never do this to like a pine or a juniper, because they just don't take heavy pruning of the root system like this as well. So you need to be, you know, you need to understand what species that it is that you're working with and what it can take and what it can't take. And also make sure you leave an even splay of roots around the tree, because all these trees have different live veins in them, and you don't want to completely cut off the supply to any of your live veins. So a good way to do that is just make sure you leave an ample amount of roots at every point of the tree. Get rid of that big one just there. But what I'll do now is I'll go through and I'll continue cleaning up the top part of this tree, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at what we've got, and then we'll start getting this into the bonsai pot. Alright, so I've prepared the bonsai pot here. I've got my tie down wires in, and I've got some akadama and pumice mixed in here. So we're going to put the tree in, try and find a good front for the tree, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and secure the tree. We're going to find a way to anchor it. I don't know how we're going to anchor it yet, but, you know, we're prepared for that anyway. And then what I'm going to have to do is actually a few of the roots that we're going to have as aerial roots that we're going to display around the tree as our nabari. I'm going to have to wire a few of them out so that they stay in place. And they're not crossing and all that kind of stuff. But eventually they will grow out. Now that we've cut a lot, that's going to redistribute that energy, and they will grow and they will thicken, and as they thicken, they'll set. So we'll be able to take that wire off. You actually can wire roots as if you were wiring branches. You just got to be really careful, because obviously if you break the root, then you're actually weakening the tree. So we're going to try and get the tree set in here now. One thing I did want to mention too is the whole time that I've been doing this, I've had my spray bottle here and just keeping the roots nice and moist and not letting the root tips dry out there. Even though we are in the YouTube studio here, we do have ventilation that feeds in fresh air to this studio. So, you know, there is moving air through this studio. So just keep in mind, you don't want any of your root tips to dry out. So I'm going to chuck the tree just here for a second, and I'll get this turntable under the pot just here so it's easier to maneuver. And then it's going to be kind of hard for me to do this so that you guys can see it at the same time. But what I might do is actually turn this around to me first so I can roughly see where I want the front of this tree to be with some of the features that it has. If I can get it back a bit and off center, that would be fantastic. Just depends what the roots here are going to allow us to do. So if I can get that, I'm just trying to get the tree kind of to the back of the pot a little bit more and a little bit off center. We don't want the tree dead in the center of the pot, but I also do need to see where our best base is on the tree. And also, I understand that the tree is probably a bit blurry for you guys at the moment because I've pushed it closer towards the camera, but I will turn it around in a second. We may want to have that towards the front a little bit more, and then we can have that root come forward, grow them out there. That gives us a nice line in there. Now, that kind of hides that a little bit, and we'll be able to use that branch. So when I spin this around, I'll explain to you guys what I'm looking at the moment. I know I'm just kind of rambling on to myself. We can see that branch okay. We'll be able to bring this forward. That's still going to be nice like that. All right, I think we've got the tree set to where we want it. So I'll turn it around so you guys can see it now. So let me just bring this back a bit. All right, we're getting there. So what we've got here, the tree's offset in the pot a little bit. It's more to this side. Our defining branch on the tree is going to be this one, even though there's nothing there at the moment. So what we've essentially done is we've moved the tree more over to this side of the pot here that you can see, and caused more negative space on this side of the tree. And I do apologise if I'm looking off this way a little bit, but that's where my screen is so I can see what you guys can see. But as you can see, we're going to have all this negative space in this side of the pot here. So we've got a little bit of distance here and a lot of distance here. And what we're going to do is once this branch just here, once that grows, we will fill this negative space just here with that. And we'll have shorter branches on this side of the tree, okay? So that's going to be our direction, moving this way. And we've moved the tree back. You can't really see it from there, but we've got a fair bit of space in front of the pot here, and we've got no space in the back of the pot here. So we've positioned our tree where we want it in the pot quite nicely. We've managed to hide this cut a little bit more. We are going to clean that up anyway. And what we'll be able to do with this branch here, if we're able to wire this over into this section here, we'll actually be able to hide that cut somewhat while we've got growth on the tree. In winter, it's going to be a little bit of a different story, okay? But it's yet to be seen whether I'm going to actually keep this branch or not, because it's coming straight at the viewer. So if I can get this wired up over this way without it looking too distracting, it's not crossing the trunk too much, all those different things, I've still got to look at that yet. We'll see how the tree grows. as I mentioned before, right now we're just concentrating on actually getting this in the bonsai pot and getting it healthy, okay? Styling, we can do all that next season. But as we're potting the tree up, we do need to kind of try and look forward the best we can into the future so we can set that tree up, we can get it on the right angle, and we can get, you know, these nice lines. So the other things that I've tried to feature by positioning this tree like this is this little cave that we've got down in here that I've talked about, okay? So we're kind of featuring that at the front of the tree, and we've got this line that we uncovered. So this is a really nice line. It adds a lot of movement to the tree. So those are all the things that I'm trying to feature here. So now we're going to have to tie the tree down and get it nice and secure. And I might actually be able to do that straight across in this little cave bit, okay? And that might be all we need to tie this tree down, because it's dead in the center of the tree almost. And we're actually not going to be going over any fine roots that we need to keep in this section. So that might be very good for us right there. We might not even need these guys over here. So I'm going to go in and get this tree tied down. I'll bring the camera back in close again so you can see. We'll get the tree tied down, and then we'll look at wiring up some of these roots. So let's jump in here and have a look. Alrighty, so I've got you guys in nice and close now so you can see in this section here. So I'm going to start by bringing this wire around the back here, and I want to make sure that in my root system here, I'm not actually crossing over any roots with my wire. So I want to move all my roots that I want to keep out of the way so we don't damage any of those roots with the wire. And I can actually cut a little bit of this off in a minute. Now I'm going to just rotate the tree this way so I can see what I'm doing at the front here. Once again, I want to move any roots that I want to keep out of the way so I don't damage them. Especially those nice new white roots. I want to get that up into there. And then get my wire cutters and trim this off a little bit. Trim the excess off. And then I'll do the same in here. And try and trim some of that excess off in there. Alright. Then I'm going to pull these up and try and get a good hold and just give them a twist so we get them set into position there. Okay, so you should be able to see just in here we've got the wire tied down there. And just give you a rotation so you can see on the other side as well where we've got that in there. We've got the wire tied off. So I'm just going to come in and shorten that down a little bit more, because now we're going to come in with our gin pliers and we're going to twist that off and tighten it. So I might just move these roots out of the way for a second and try and get this into a spot where you guys can see it. And we'll grab a hold of our wire here like this. And I do apologise if this looks awkward. I must say that bonsai work for camera is so much harder than just regular bonsai work, because you got to try and do things in awkward ways so the camera can see what you're doing. And I know it's hard to see here, but we've got our wire coming in here and it's running straight across the base of the tree here. So there's actually no roots here. So we're going to pull and twist. Pull up and twist. Now I'm actually going to rotate this towards me just so I can do a proper job. But you can see a little bit there of what I was trying to achieve. So with our wire here, we're going to pull up and twist again. Alright, so that's got the tree nice and sturdy on that side. Now I'm actually thinking that I do still want to tie this side of the tree down. Now I've actually found a good spot just here. So let me move these roots out of the way for you. So just up in here, you can see over the top of this root just here, I should be able to bring this wire, if I move this way, try and move any roots out of the way once again that we want to keep. So I'm going to reorganize this a little bit. So I'm going to move these over here, move these roots over the top here, and bring this in. And bring this up and over like that. And then same on this side, we want to move any roots out of the way of the wire so we don't damage them. And this one's going to have to go up and under this root here. And then we can bring our wire together here and tie it over the top there like that. Get our wire cutters and snip that off. And now you can see that there, we can tighten that down. So if I just come in with my gin pliers here, I pull up and twist, pull up and twist. Now when we're tying down, we never just want to twist without pulling, because if we twist, it twists in the one spot and you get friction and your wire will actually break. So you want to make sure that you want to pull and twist. Now that that's nice and tight, I'll just trim that off. And now our tree is actually nice and stable within the pot. So now we can go through and actually look at setting some of these roots out in the pot. And I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to do that with some wire. And then after that, we can add some soil and we should be done. So let's start getting some wire on these roots. Now, the front of the tree first. Some of these won't actually need wire per se. I'll see what I can actually just put into place by hand first, and what will stay, and then what we'll have to have wire on. We don't want to have to put wire on everything, but you see here, for example, we've got these two roots, right? They're crossing, so we'll have to bring this one over this way. This has got quite a lot of root mass still on it, and this one down into this corner. So if I can bring that into the corner of the pot like that and get it to stay there, see how it moves away? Even if I put soil in there, it's going to move away. So if I put some wire there, I can actually have that come out to the corner of the pot, which will look quite nice. This big root here, see how it's going straight down, okay? I'd like to have this one come out on more of an obtuse angle. So we've got a small finer root that's coming off the bottom of it here, which has actually got quite a lot of fine feeder roots on it. So if we can bring that up just to where it'll be at the top of the soil surface, but have this root down into the soil surface, it's going to look a lot nicer. Now this root here, we've got quite a lot of root mass on it. I'm trying to, there we go. We're going to have to actually trim this back a little bit. We don't want all of this on here, so I'm going to trim it back to here where there's quite a lot of little nice fine feeder roots. All right, so we don't need all of that. So we're going to have that out into that corner. So these two roots here, these are our first two that we're going to put wire on. So this should be thick enough just here. I'm going to measure it out like I would a branch. Now we don't have to go all the way down to the bottom of the root, just enough that we can guide it to where we want to go. And this wiring is going to be somewhat exactly the same as if we were wiring out branches, okay? We want to kind of follow the same kind of rules. And I'm going to, I know you guys don't like that word, rules, but we do have to have some guidelines of what we do and don't do. So I'm just going to see what the best way to go about this is. I'm actually going to go over the top of this root so I can support it a little bit. I'm going to go over there like that. I know you guys can't see right now, I apologise. So I've gone around this big root as an anchor, all right? And now I'm going to come up under this root and over. And we just want to be really careful here because we don't want to break these roots. Okay, this is the tree's lifeline that we're dealing with right here. So slow and steady does it. And we can keep the pitch of our wire, you know, fairly wide. We don't have to go tight with our wire on this because these roots are very pliable, very easy to bend. And all we're really doing is just guiding them into place. And then this one as well will come through. Continue to wrap that wire around. Alrighty, so as you can see, that's where we've ended up with those two roots wired out. Now we're going to try and get this bigger one wired out. I just want to see if there's another bigger root around the back here somewhere that needs wiring so we can anchor the two together. Now there is one here that needs to be moved over to the side here. So I'm going to put these little roots, I've got some little roots here, I'm going to try and put them down into the pot. And they're going to get buried, so we won't see them. And we do want to be mindful when we're pushing these guys down into the pot, okay, so over here, that part of the root that is going to be showing, we make sure that they're set out in a place that we would like them to show, okay? So we don't want just crossing roots everywhere, and we want to set everything out really nicely because as that root grows and thickens, that'll add to part of our nabari. So if we keep that in a spot where we like it, it'll be good. Okay, so I need to get this up into the pot here. Just moving roots around at the moment into their kind of rough positioning. And the tree is going to look a little bit funny with the wire over the roots for a while, but you know, once it grows out and we get it to the point where we can, you know, show this tree, we're going to be very thankful that we did it. So having it look a little bit funny for now is not too bad. Alrighty, so I'm thinking that one and that one can go together. So I'm going to need a little bit thicker wire for this one. Measure it out, the gap from there to there. Gives me my rough amount of wire that I need. And for this one, I'm actually going to go under here and try and get this around here to where the other root is, because the other root's around the back. I'm trying to get two the same size, roughly wide together. Alrighty, so I'm going to anchor that up and around here, like that. Once again, just being super careful about all the little fine feeder roots that are on here, because you don't really want to break anything. So slow and steady. Make sure it's really well anchored. Okay, now I'm going to hold this and I'm going to anchor it off onto the other root around the back. Okay, so if I hold it here, and this is the other root that we're coming out onto. Okay. Now this is the one that I said before was split. So we're going to try and, because it doesn't really matter that it's split, because we've still got our live vein down here. This part here where it's split from, we don't even have any roots there. So what I'm going to do is try and have this wire come over the top of that section and kind of just hold it shut like that, and that will support that for me. And now I can come out onto the root itself. I'm going to try and avoid those ones there, even though I'm probably going to cut them off. But like I said before, treat every root like you're going to use it until you actually do cut it off. Alright, so that's going right down to the tip there, so we're just going to cut that bit of wire off there like that. And now we know with this, there's probably an opportunity here to put a little bit of movement in the root where it comes off the tree, but we want to keep an eye on that section where it's already split. We don't want to do any more damage there, which is just there. And we want to twist that way and have those tips go down into the pot. And that gives us much more interest in our root just there. Now I'm just going to adjust this root here. Alrighty, now for our big root around the front here. Once again, just being very careful with everything. Try and avoid all those little fine feeder roots. And we can terminate that wire off there. And now, hopefully, so this is actually part of that big thick root. This is a finer root that's on it. So we're going to put that down into the soil in a position that if it thickens, it's going to look nice. Always thinking ahead. Now let me just have a look from the front. Just going to position a few of these roots at the front here while I'm looking at them. It's good. This tree's giving me like a real jungle vibe. It's pretty cool. Now I think the only other roots that we've got to wire is these two up here. And then that should be it for the roots. So I'm just going to get a little bit of wire on there. And then hopefully we can start getting some soil into the pot. Now we're going to have to be a little bit more careful here because we don't really have anything to anchor off onto. Well, actually, what I might do is bring the wire around the tree like this. There's a gap through there. I can bring that up under there like that. And this should just help us anchor off a little bit better. Now, just being super careful again, because we don't want to damage any of our roots here. All right. I'm going to come over the top of this one as well. And I'm actually going to terminate that one early because I don't need it to really go any further. Now, let me just get these into position. Seeing what these roots are doing down below it as well. We want everything to kind of be a little bit uniform where we can. All right. Now we're just going to have to trim some of these off here because they're definitely not going to make it down into the pot. But we do have ends that are going to make it down in there. But we can always come back after we put the soil in and just see what roots haven't made it into the soil and trim them up then. But for now, that's basically our roots wired out where we want them. So now we'll go through and we'll put the soil into the pot and we'll get a better picture of what the tree looks like because it still probably looks a little bit messy. So we'll go and get that soil into the pot and see where we go from there. So as mentioned, I am just using a mix of Akadama and pumice. I might just put this over this side. I'll start filling this up and we're going to have to chopstick this in. Now, me being the idiot that I am, I mixed up my soil and then left it outside and then it rained. So my soil is actually pre-wet, I guess you could say. But I wouldn't recommend working with wet soil all the time. One other thing that I did too that you guys didn't see, and I'll just explain, is I went back around and all the different ends of the roots that I'd previously cut, I just went through and I gave them another little cut and made sure that those cuts were clean and precise. That way we have the best opportunity of new root growth in that area. I'm just going to change over to a smaller scoop here so I can get in here. Alright, and get my chopstick and start working this soil in. Start working it in around the base of this tree. And make sure that all our roots are covered in. Now we want to make sure that we chopstick in, we get rid of all those air pockets in between the roots, and make sure we work our soil in to all those little nooks and crannies and crevices that might be in there, which once again will give us that best opportunity for root growth. Alright, so I'm just going to go around now and I'm going to chopstick all this soil in. This is probably going to take a good 10 minutes or so. And then we'll come back and we'll have a look at cleaning up this cut on the tree, putting some cut putty on, and then we should be pretty much done. So I'll see you after I finish chopsticking this soil. Alright guys, so we've got the Akadama and pumice in the pot now. I've gone around and cleaned up all the roots that didn't make it into the soil. So it just looks a little bit neater now. So the last thing that I'm going to do on this tree today is I want to clean up this wound a little bit. So this was cut when was it? Last season, I think. It's been a while. I've worked on a lot of trees since then. So what I want to do is, that was where we did the trunk chop on it and then grew it off from the leader. You always leave a little bit extra on there in case you get some dieback. Now this year we can come in and clean it up a little bit, put some cut putty on there and let that really callus over during the growing season. That's going to be the fastest time that this is going to callus over, so doing it now as we're moving into the growing season. Get that all cleaned up, get the cut putty on there, and we should be good as gold. Now with what we've ended up with here on our root system, we have quite a lot of roots, 5 feet of roots down in the pot now. Later on, if I decide that I don't really like these aerial looking roots that we've got here, we'll see how we go. They might grow on me. I'm kind of 50-50 on them at the moment. But as this tree grows and populates this pot, you know, maybe in 2 years we can come back, and once this pot's full of roots, we might have enough down in the pot to support the system that's actually grown off the base of the tree itself, and we might be able to cut these roots off, so we can make that decision then. But for now, they're extra support for the tree. They might grow on me, they might look cool, just that real jungle style tree. But that's where we're kind of at now. But I'll bring you in close, we'll have a quick look at cleaning up this wound, and then that'll be the end of the video for this swamp cypress potting. So let's get into this. Alright, so we've got our wound here, our flat cut that we did. So we're going to come in with our knob cutters, and we're just going to try and take this back to some live tissue, okay? And then that will start the callousing process again, but also at the same time, as well as going back to live tissue, we're going to take this stump back a bit, okay, and make it look, you know, less like a harsh cut that's just been done on a tree, and try and smooth it out and make a smoother transition into the new leader from where this was originally trunk chopped. So you just want to go a little bit at a time. You don't want to be, you know, making your tool work too hard. So just start by going around and taking the edges off. We don't need to dig in too deep just yet. And try and get that perimeter set for around where you want to take the stump back to. Now, I don't want to go back too close to my leader just yet, because once again, I'm going to let this heal up and let it die back a bit and just see where we end up. So slow and steady wins the race here. We don't want to just go like a bull at a gate and then end up getting too much dye back on it and, you know, ruining the work that we've set up. So just slowly taking little bits out here. I know that somebody did point this out when I did the shorts, whether I was going to actually fix this up or not. And this is the time to be doing it now. So we're getting that work done. And this is where a good set of knob cutters are really gonna help. You know, these kick-all ones that I'm using are really nice and sharp, and they make the job a lot easier. But like I said, even with a good quality tool, you don't want to overwork the tool. I'm just going to have to rotate this towards me for a second. Now this is a good opportunity to show you why we do leave that stub, because you can see how far we've carved this back already, and you can see in the center here where we've still got all this dead wood. So that's how far this has died back. Now can you imagine if we had to cut that completely flush with our new leader, we would have had dieback right in here, and there's a chance we would have lost this. So that's why we leave that there. We don't rush straight into it. Like I said in the short that I did with this tree when I was pointing out the long branch, sometimes we need to have a tree that looks a little bit funny for a while to do the proper work that we need. It's not all about having a finished tree straight away. And the more that we, do the proper work in the proper steps, the more chance of us having a really nice finished show tree in the future. Because you don't want to get down the track and then realize that you know, you're close to having a finished tree, but you've got all these problems that you need to fix. And now it's going to take you another couple of years to fix those problems because, you know, you didn't do the work properly in the first place. Now this looks quite aggressive what I'm doing here, but this will be fine. And you know what you'll find with this tree in particular, it's going to shoot a whole bunch of buds from this particular area that I'm doing this to. But we're coming into our warmer weather now, so we're away from that danger zone in winter of fungal infections in a big wound like this. You know, this is why we don't want to do this kind of stuff in winter, because we're opening the tree right up. But now that the weather's warming up, there's less chance that we're gonna harm the tree doing this. Plus we'll get that covered up with some cut putty and get it on its way. Alright, so that's it for today's video. As you can see, we've potted up this swamp cypress from development and we've transferred it over into refinement. We've taken it out of the organic soil and we've put it in the inorganic soil. We've cut the big thick roots down. We've left our fine feeder roots. We're going to hopefully promote new fine feeder roots in the mix that we've got now in our inorganic mix. We've fixed up our big wound here. As you can see, it's covered in cut putty now. We're going to grow our main branch on into this negative space that we've left in the pot over this side. We'll move this little guy over to here and that'll help cover up this wound. This branch should be okay. I had a look at it before. It's not going to cause too many problems being there, so we'll keep that on. We'll wire it over. We're going to have to wire this forward just a little bit more now because we did have this apex leaning towards the front, which is now the back. So we're going to have to try and bring it back this way just a little bit more. But for now, we're just going to let this root system recover. We're going to let the tree fully bud out, let the growth just go wild, get some energy back into the tree, and then we can come back in and start some work on wiring and our branching. But at the moment, the main priority for this tree is just going to be getting it healthy now that it's been potted up. But I think this turned out absolutely fantastic. As I said, I'm still on the fence about the aerial roots, but later on, if we populate this pot full of roots, we may be able to cut them off, but by that time, they may or may not grow on me. As I said, it's got that real jungle look and vibe to it. But once again, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys got lots of good tips and tricks for repotting out of that. Especially your deciduous trees like this one here, as this is a deciduous conifer. If you liked what you've seen in today's video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, as that really helps the channel out. Link down in the description below to our new free forum that we've got. So jump on over there, sign up and join in on the discussions. If you like the t-shirt that I've been wearing today, I'll leave a link down in the description below as well. That would be great because I absolutely froze my butt off today modeling this for you guys. It's still the end of winter here, so wearing a t-shirt is, you know, still quite cool. But besides that, until next time, enjoy your bonsai journey.